Welcome to another edition of Finish First. I'm Judge Dawson, and as you know, these workshops are aimed at giving you tools and techniques that you can use to take your life to the next level. If you've been watching these workshops, you know that I am a judge in the city of East Cleveland, and I'm also a yoga teacher. And basically, my mission is to spend every opportunity that I have in the position as judge to give you tools that you can use so that you can avoid even having to come to see me. Yes, I love what I do, but I don't like the destruction that I see in my courtroom. And if you're listening to this video, you can gain some information from it. Now, it's interesting because a lot of people say, you know what, Judge, that doesn't apply to me. It applies to my friends. It applies to the young people out there today. But do you realize that we are all just one bad decision away from ruining our entire lives? Yes, one bad decision away from ruining your entire life. Because once you are caught up in this legal matrix, it will get a grasp on you and it will not let go. So my goal for you is to get information that you can use to take your life, your success, your business, your bag, whatever it is that you have as your goal, take it to the next level by developing these emotional and social tools so that you can live your best life legal free, legal matrix free, and mess free. Let's go. All right, I always start these sessions with a quick review. If you know anything about my theories, it's all based on being a cycle breaker. And there are 4 elements to being a cycle breaker. The first one is you have to recognize the need to break a cycle. You have to take a look at your life and determine what is it about your life, what is it about my life that I want to change so I can go to the next level. Let's say it's not even anything in your life. You say, you know what, my life is perfect. You know, a lot of people think that, even though we know there is no perfect life. Maybe there's something in the world that you want to change. Maybe you don't like global warming. Maybe you don't like what they're doing in the seas to litter the seas. I don't know whatever it is, but maybe you look at the world to see if there's something that you want to get involved with changing. If the world is too big, maybe you look right in your community. What's going on in your community that needs to be changed? Maybe it's police brutality. Maybe it's the things that the government is doing that you don't agree with. That's an opportunity for you to get involved and to help break a cycle. Maybe it's something that's happening in your home every single day. When you walk through the door, you know that there are things going on in your home that are not productive. Those are all opportunities for you to be a cycle breaker. So the first step of being a cycle breaker is to, 1, recognize the need to change. Number 2, you have to commit to breaking the cycle. And basically what that means is you have to put forth the effort to really break the cycle. It's one thing to say, you know what, I know what I need to do. I know what's happening in the community. I know what's happening in my life or my home. But now the next step is actually putting down the commitment to making the change. Think about it. You and I both know people who often talk a lot. They tell you what they're going to do. They talk about what their big dreams are, but they fail to put the dreams to action. So commit to doing it. That's the next step, committing to making the change. The third step, once you've committed to making the change and you've identified the change, obviously, now you have to put the process in order. You have to get the tools to make the change, the tools to accomplish your goal. Because if you don't have the tools together, how will you get anywhere? So if you say, you know what, I need to move to another city because I want to be an activist in another city. And then you say, you know what, I'm going to commit to moving. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to quit my job. That's a commitment. But now what are the tools? Do you even have a ride to get to the next city? Did you even think about that? Did you think about where you're going to live when you move to that city? That's just a small example of how you can identify the issue, you can commit to making the change, but now the tools that are necessary to get you from A to Z, they have to be in place. And then the fourth step is you have to have the grit to hang in there when the going gets tough, when people stop believing in you, when no one wants to trust you, when everyone tells you no. Are you going to fold Are you going to give up on your dream? Are you going to give up on improving yourself? I say no. And let me take it down to something that's really interesting and obvious. When you decide that you want to change your life for the better, when you decide that you're going to stop smoking weed or stop doing drugs or stop robbing people, whatever it is, your friends or the people that call themselves your friends, they are going to look at you, they're going to criticize you, and they're going to try to make you feel less than who you are. But guess what? You're no longer that same person because you've committed to breaking that cycle. So don't give up when it gets hard. Don't give up when your friends turn their back on you. Don't give up when people walk away from you. Those are just additional opportunities for you to stay in the game and be a cycle breaker. So let's go. All right, so I am parked, had things to do, but you are important to me, so I'm going to continue with our video. Today we are talking about the topic of fighting for what's right. Fighting for what's right. And when I take a look at that topic, there's so many different directions I can go in, but today I'm inspired to take it in two very specific directions that we will use to break down, decompose, and figure out what's best for us as being cycle breakers. All right, fighting for what's right, principle number one. Put your energy in the positive direction or the right direction. So what I find in my court, what I find as a judge is that a lot of people like to fight. I mean, whether it's physical fighting or some type of verbal battle or even a mental fighting. People like to fight. I guess it's in our nature because we have this innate character inside of us that causes us to either flee away from trouble, or fight. And that's been developed over years and people have talked about it on a scientific basis. So one thing I know for sure is that people like to fight. But the question is, are we fighting for the right things and are we putting our energy in the best direction? I would submit to you that we are not. Most times we are fighting in a negative direction. We're battling against people who either one, are here to help us, and we don't want that help. We don't want their advice, so we fight them. We fight the advice, we fight the wisdom. So one, we battle against people who are trying to help us. Two, oftentimes we battle against things that we don't have control over. Some things you just don't have control over. For instance, your interaction with police officers on the street. There's only so much of it that you can control. You control how you react and you control what you do. You cannot control the officer that comes to your window. You cannot make that officer like you. You cannot make that officer feel that Black Lives Matter. Now, we know that they do, and there is a way to deal with it in the justice center and the justice system. But right here on the street, when you are pulled over by an officer, that's a battle that you may not win. So that's an example of how oftentimes we'll put up a fight, we will battle people, we will battle things, but we're not putting our battle in a positive or functional direction. Instead, what I submit to you is that we should work on fighting in a positive way. Fight for things that you can control. When's the last time you fought for your own right to be further educated? When's the last time you fought for your own right to have peace in your home, peace in your mind? Now, that does not require that you physically fight to gain those things, but it requires you to want to have that type of environment, that type of education, that type of situation. And you have to want it so much so that you're willing to fight for it. And what does fight for it means? Well, it means that you will eliminate people out of your environment who don't serve you. It means that you will eliminate activities out of your life that doesn't help you grow or help you become a better person. That's what I mean by fighting in the positive direction. What are the things that are going to make your life better? When's the last time you fought yourself to say, you know what, I'm not going to drink and drive no matter what I do? Because if you drink and drive, or if you kick it, or if you use drugs and all these things that are addictive, then that's a battle in and of itself. But no, we don't want to fight that battle. We'd rather go to court and fight the judge or be disrespectful to the judge in the courtroom when that's another situation that you don't control. So what I suggest to you is that while we are determined to fight, while we are determined to fight for our rights and make sure you understand, hey, I know my rights, why don't we fight for what's right and use our energy to fight in a positive direction? Fight for something that will help you be a better person, a better employee, a better mother or father, a better son or daughter, a better friend. So when we're talking about fighting and fighting for what's right, my first principle is to make sure that you use your energy to fight in the right direction. The next principle in fighting for what's right is to aggressively seek justice. Yeah. Aggressively seek justice. That means in everything that you and I do, we should be overly concerned about how justice is prevailing, how people are being treated, and what are the positive outcomes. So that right there gives you an opportunity to be involved in some of the fights that happen on the national stage. We know that throughout this country over the last year, matter of fact, let's call it like it is, over the last several decades, certain groups of people have not been able to get the same rights, the same benefits, the same justice that other people get. And there's not enough fighting for that. There's not enough people who are concerned with other people's rights. But I submit to you that that's an area where we can all grow. That's an area where we can say, you know what, I want justice for the community at large. So instead of spending your energy, spinning your wheels, fighting battles that you won't win, why don't we all get together, march together, protest together, or show up at these legislators' offices and their meetings so that you can be involved with changing the laws in a way that will serve you better and serve the greater community. So when we're talking about fighting for what's right, I want us to fight for justice. And that's a general statement right now because I mean justice for all, not only just in the courtroom, but in the game of life. Let's fight for justice. The second way that we can fight and aggressively seek justice is to seek justice right in your home. You know, it's amazing to me how many people live so many different lives. And it's not a dig on anybody because we're human and we have a lot of personalities and we have a lot of experiences, and it depends on who you're around as to what experience is pulled out of you. And in fact, there's a whole science that discusses the fact that the people that you surround yourself with, you will mirror their energy, and oftentimes you may mirror their behavior and activity. And that's just something based on the DNA that's in our body. We've been able to discover that in a lot of other animals and primates and things like that. It's a little less discovered in humans, but the bottom line is you and I both know that there are times when we mirror the behavior of the people that we are around. So what does that mean for you and I? That means that right in our homes, in our personal lives, we have to begin the process of fighting for what's right and fighting for justice in our homes. That means that when you go home, you can't be abusive to your significant other. Whether it's your boyfriend, whether it's your spouse, you can't be abusive to that person. And what does that abuse look like? Well, it's not just physical. It's not just putting your hands on the person, but are you verbally abusive? Have you called someone ugly? Or have you called them other names or out of their name? That is a form of abuse. And too often in our community, we just blow it off. Well, that's just how they talk. Or they call me that. They don't really mean it. But you shouldn't have to endure any type of verbal abuse in your home. And we need to be more and more serious about fighting for that type of justice in our homes. What else? Well, what about the way that you treat your mom and your father? You know how many people I know that are disconnected from their family and say things like, you know what, I don't mess with them. I'm not gonna mess with them. Well, How does that look from a justice standpoint or a reconciliation standpoint? Compassion or love. Instead of dealing with all these other situations and trying to figure out how to rule the world and become the best actress and get the biggest bag or whatever it is that you are pursuing, why don't you aggressively pursue the justice in your home and reconcile with the people that you live with? Because what you don't realize is that the way that you act in your home, based on the relationships that you have in your home, that is going to translate into what you do in the community. So it will be no surprise when you end up in front of a courtroom and you're dealing with Judge Dawson. That's not going to surprise me if you have broken relationships at home, because there's a part of you that just does not connect the overall compassion. And oftentimes that compassion starts with the people that we are closest with. So if we're talking about fighting for what's right, let's fight for the relationships right in our home. Let's fight for the love right in our environment. And most importantly, fight for your right to have those same things, because if you're not getting them, it's time for you to bounce. The next level when we're talking about fighting for justice aggressively is in your community. I can talk for days about the things that go on in the community that we need to change. I mean, it's simple, from things like speeding down the street. Now you wonder, well, how does that apply to me, Judge Dawson? What harm is it to speed down the street? Well, it is no harm to you unless you are a person who has a family member who's been hit by a speeding car. Or if you're a person who has been in a vehicle accident because somebody was speeding or disobeying the traffic device, and you found out they didn't have insurance, so you had to pay for the whole thing. See, we don't even relate to tragic situations until we are victims of those tragic situations. So seek justice in your community by behaving in a way that supports your community and doesn't harm your community. Let me give you another example. All of this fleeing and eluding police officers has to stop. Now, I know there are various reasons why people flee. One, you can be afraid. Two, you don't want the beat down. And we know there are some terrible police officers who do nothing but prey on their victims, who are people who they stop in the street. So we know that that's an issue. But what I'm saying to you is you have to control what you can control. And don't turn that crappy, terrible situation into a felony charge against you for fleeing and eluding. And then I tell people all the time, the worst part of it is, though you want to get away because you don't believe police officers are going to be fair, and again, I understand that. Or you want to get away because there's a warrant for your arrest, and I understand that too. But here are the two things to consider. One is, what if you hurt yourself? What if you run into something, you have an accident, and all of a sudden you're standing before me as a judge in a cast, or your arm is cut off, or you're missing a leg, all because you didn't stop and you continue to flee and elude. You hit something, and now for the rest of your life, you have to wear a memory of that one incident because now you're physically disabled or you're in a bad situation. Okay, maybe that doesn't move you. What about this? What about if you're fleeing and speeding and you hit somebody and you hurt them? I mean, you're already going to hurt their car. But what if you kill that person? So now the fact that you didn't want to stop for police officers, well, that's gone way beyond your traffic stop. That's gone way beyond you having whatever you had on you that you didn't want to be discovered. Now you are standing before a judge facing jail time or maybe life in prison because you took someone else's life while you were fleeing and eluding. So that's an example of how you have to seek justice in your community. You have to care enough about your community so you don't behave in a way that you are being a danger to your community. Because the same thing applies to the people that you love. If people are out here fleeing and speeding and running from police officers recklessly, what if you're at work, but you get that call that somebody that you love was hit by a car that was speeding? You are going to be furious. So don't do it. Demand justice in your community. And I'll give you one more example. I had some people in my courtroom who were charged with burglary because they broke into someone's home and they had guns and masks and all that stuff. And I had these people in front of me and I said, you know what? As they're asking me to reduce their bond, I said, look, you have a lot of life ahead of you and you may get past this and you may do some time, but think of it this way. What if somebody did that to your mother or your daughter or your son? They wake up in the middle of the night and they find that somebody's in their house pointing a gun at them. You would lose your mind. So if you don't want your family victimized, you want justice for your family, don't be out there doing the same thing to other people. So that's what I mean by fighting for what's right and seeking justice in the community. It's not just what people do to you, but it's your everyday behavior in your own house, on your job, or in your community. So no, don't speed. No, don't run from police. No, don't run the red light. Don't harm other people because you wouldn't want it done to you. So when we talk about fighting for what's right, that is my message for you today, cycle breakers. Let's fight for what's right so that we can have a healthy life, so that you and I can achieve all of our goals, so that you can no longer be wrapped up in this legal system. Let's do it. And let's spread this message so that we can all grow and we can all be cycle breakers. All right. It's Judge Dawson. That's my session for today. A little passionate. And again, the reason I'm in the car is because I started this message in my office, but I had to go somewhere. But this was too important to miss. It was too important to put off because I care about you and I don't want you wrapped up in this legal matrix. So do what you got to do to be the best that you can be. Let's go.